Hello everyone. Sorry for the slight delay. We experienced a little bit of connection difficulties, but yep, let's get this session started. My name is Ashwin Ravikumar. I'll be taking your session today. I'm going to be explaining about game narratives in detail. So let's see how actually stories are made and dropped. How they're made, how they're created, and then how they're being used in like everyday scenarios and stuff. You can take examples from different games as well and put it into practice. And yep, that's a brief introduction of today's session. Um, all right. E- Yes. So we're going to be starting with uh, the anatomy of a story. So there are basically two types of story structures. One is a three-act structure, as you can see in front of you. So first, you will be having um, a little bit of uh, 1 second. Just hold on for a second. All right, yeah, I'm back. Okay, so let's start with a very brief introduction to storytelling. So there are three types of storytelling. So the first one is a third person. So, I think it would be better if I illustrate this also in front of you so that it will be easier for you guys to understand with something, a descriptive thing to look at as well while I explain session today. Okay, so let's name this OneNote and let's say we want this one to be hmm, you guys able to see the screen right now? I think should be visible. All right, so I'm gonna get started. Hmm, okay, that's weird. Hmm, just give me a second. And yeah, now it should be fine. Okay, so there are basically three types of storytelling in uh, um, aspect of persons point like perspective to be more precise. So the first one would be third person. I'm pretty sure all of you know what third person means. So basically, it is a story which is also having a narrator and it's also having you, the reader. So basically, the three things involved in a third person story. The first is the main story, that's what a writer works upon. And then there's a narrator, basically someone who's narrating the story. It could be the main character himself or what he thinks in his mind and stuff like that. And the last one is you, the reader. And that's how these three things come together. And the best examples for these would be novels, or even short stories and stuff. This is where a third person perspective comes into play. Now, when you come to second person, um, just delete this. Yeah. So when you come to second person, you have the story, and then you have the person you, that is the viewer. So not the reader, because in this case we're not working with uh, the what do you call we're not working with something like a person reading something, but rather a person viewing something. And obviously, the most popular examples of these would be movies. Movies have like so awesome um, storylines and stuff, but yeah, everything is viewed in terms of two perspectives. One is the actual story, the person who's writing the story, one is you, the viewer. So this everything comes into this acting, editing, cinematography, VFX, serials, everything comes under second person perspective. And uh, then you have the first person. That is our main topic of consideration. Basically, it's the story and you, the player who's living inside the story. That's where games come from. So you, a player who plays games, you're basically experiencing everything in terms of another character or another, it's everything is like in your perspective in a sense. Although you're playing another character and you're playing out his entire life and stuff, you're actually immersing yourself in the role of that particular character. That is how first person perspectives come into play over here. And yeah, obviously you have games, some cinematography and stuff are also there, but mostly it's the better ones are in games. And yeah, also want you guys to remember three terms which are really important in narrative. One is ID, which is your instinct. One is ego, which is your reality. The other one is your superego, which is your morality. So basically, what happens here is in between your ID and your superego, and just draw this a bit better. Super ego comes your ego, that is your reality. So characters are basically created with this ideology in mind. You first have the character himself. Okay, wait. Some people are saying they're not able to see the screen properly. Uh, I'll just actually just turn on display capture. Yeah. All right. So, yeah. So you first have your ID, which is your instinct, and then you have your reality, which is your superego, morality, and stuff. Now we're moving on to the three-act story structure, which we were talking about a bit earlier. So let's just go into this. Yeah. So you have your three-act story structure. There are two types. One is three-act, and the other one is also um, uh, it's called the five act, but let's move with the three act first. So in your act one, as you can see, you first have there's a basic setup that's going on into this story. There's the character actually wants something, he always thinks about there's something different has to be there in his life and stuff like that. For example, let's take the example of the most popular movie ever, like pop culture film, The Matrix. I'm pretty sure most of you have watched the original movie, first in the series, The Matrix. So in that, when the entire movie starts, you first have like the beginning, which is the guy thinking that he can do something much more better. He's living another life himself, but that's not enough for him. And this like he hears about a lot of people in the world. Like he's heard of the legendary Morpheus, and he's heard of them, and he wants to be like them, but he doesn't know like what to do, or like he just want something to happen. And that's how this story starts off in that way. And then you have something inciting happening. The first incident that happens is the computer screen. Someone types something in front of him, it's something suspicious, curious. The guy is like wondering what's happening. And then you have the inciting incident. You have something the one where he meets Trinity for the first time in the bar, so in the club actually. So over there, that would be the first, introduction he gets to the world of the Matrix. And then when he gets introduced to everything, when he knows and he understands, this the other inciting incident that happens is when he meets Morpheus. Over when he starts like running away from the agents in his from his office, and then meets Morpheus after that. That is also part of the inciting incident. Everything is just setting up so that the character gets introduced into the world of the Matrix, and then after all of that, just before he understands what his role is in the world of the Matrix, he's offered a choice where he does have second thoughts. Second thoughts meaning like, okay, probably um, something might happen. So shouldn't go to this world. It might be a huge thing that just changes everything from in his perspective or something like that. And that moment would be the pills, the red pill, the blue pill. I'm pretty sure everybody knows about that scene. So yeah, so that's how the entire Act One of Matrix was structured. And then Act Two would be conflicts. There's like a lot of crises, disasters, obstacles that the character has to face. He's training, he's learning some lot of stuff, and then there comes the big midpoint, the big plot twist that comes in between. Is when he meets the old lady who tells him about everything, and then he realizes, oh yes, okay, I understand what my role is, and we're still not like there's always a lot of conflicts, a lot of disaster, crisis, and then when we move into the Act Three, it reaches the climax of the entire story where the character finally realizes his role inside the Matrix, and he knows that he is the one, and he's able to defeat the other agent at the end. And then there's like a lot of other slight obstacles and stuff, and the story would be falling down. It would be resolved. Any things that should have been explained before will be explained at them, including like plot twists and stuff, or how stuff is happening. Everything will be explained at that point, right? And then you would just resolve the entire movie and then end it. So that's how a normal three-act structure does. Usually games do have a three-act structure, but then those are for like small games and stuff. But a five-act structure is nothing but another guideline for a story, but it's a bit more, it's enhanced and it's more detailed, and there's a lot of things that um, um, in more detail about the story. There's like a lot of setting, character development. There are a lot of conflicts, a lot of actions. There's a huge disaster. There's the final boss fight, and there's like a couple of other bosses that you need to keep fighting, and then there's a falling action. So that's it's the exact same as a three-act structure, but five-act is a just a bit more detailed version of that. And there's the takeaway of this particular topic, that is the structures, the anatomy of a story structure, is that this is just a tool that would help you guys to write or construct a story, and it's basically like a guideline or guardrail, and it anchors story ideas so that you guys can structure a particular story of yours, and kind of dwell deeper and stuff. So basically, if you guys want to know major difference between three act and five act, the major thing would be that if like you, the writer, wants to delve deeper into the story and you want to expand more, and but you want to like explain more of the story, you want to have more conflicts, more actions, more plot twists. So whatever you want to add into your story, you want to have more of that. It's better to use a five-act structure so that it makes it this basically anchors your process of storytelling, and kind of allows the writer to make long stories easily with a little bit of help of like just think of it like as guidelines to better help structure your story. So, yep, as you can see, the takeaway is written here. And then we have the next type of things that is called the tension curves. So, what are tension curves? Yeah, I'm back. So, what are tension curves? There are two types of tension curves. So, this is the first type that you can see in front of you. It's a simple graph that has been illustrated. you need to have this kind of a flow in your game. So, what attention curves is nothing but over the period of time, the character must keep on experiencing something that would help him, um, get into the game, like keep him engrossed, get him dwell deeper into the game, understand the story, something that needs to make the player kept engaged and stuff, right? So that would be a tension curve. The best example, this is a very simple example of a very simple story. You have a crisis coming in like periodic or like non-periodic, but like very close to each other. And you have like the player play all of these crises one at a time till he reaches the climax, and then after that it's just a subtle drop. So this is one type of tension growth. The other one is like this, where you have a prologue where like you have like some major act, like something huge is happening at first, and you don't understand it, you don't know why that's happening. If I were to give an example of such a thing happening, hmm. Oh, that's funny. I can't think of an example. Uh, oh yeah, so there was this like really old fighter game that I used to play. It was I think called Naruto. I think it was from a popular anime. It was called Naruto Ninja Storm 4. So the first fight was actually the fight between like two great leaders. I mean, they were like two best friends, and it was like a huge fight that they kind of like showcased, and you get to play that particular fight as well and get to learn about all of the abilities. And it was like a huge prologue, you could say, to the entire game. Sometimes it can be related, sometimes doesn't have to be related. It's upon you, but preferably if it's related, like even if stories like there's some movies which start like about a heist or something like they have like this prologue where they explain stuff, and then they'll be like, okay, let me explain why I'm here, and then they would start from beginning, and then that's how act one would start. So yeah, so these are like two types of tension curves that can be used in gameplays. Very helpful, in my opinion. But yeah, so let's move on to story focus. So there are two types of focus, story focus. So what is a focus? Focus is what do you want the story to be about? So there are basically two types. One is character driven. So you want a story that's like mostly it focuses most on the character's internal conflict. It's all about why it matters, It's you want to focus on something like that if you're going for a character driven story. Sorry about that. Um, just give me a second. I'll kind of, I think it was muted. Okay. No idea. But yeah, so you would want if you want a character-driven story, that's what you would be working at. A story that would be like it focuses on a character's internal conflict. Like for example, as I take example of Matrix, you do have a part about the character where he's always wondering, is this what I should supposed to do? I don't understand why people are calling me the one. He had a lot of questions, and no one was answering those questions, and it was always conflicting inside him, and he never used to like trust or believe himself, and then he used to go forward. And what you would be trying to resolve in such a kind of a story is like how you would resolve that conflict. That particular conflict is what you would target, right? So it could be anything, it could be a person having like some mental problems, PTSDs, or if you want for like darker themes, or if you just want simple problems, just like simple. So there was this one story which I saw, which is like a it could even the conflict could be about a really relevant problem. Like so, you have a parents comparing children, right? So you could have a problem resolving on that. Like there's one guy who's been neglected his whole life because his parents used to always dote on the younger one or something. It could be something simple as that. But then, I mean, it doesn't make sense for a person to have trauma or something because of it. But yeah, he does feel changed. It gets hard for him, especially if the parents take it, for like, a very farther range than what's expected. And there are even some examples that I've included over here. You have the Joker, you have Fight Club, you have Taxi Driver, you have Godfather, you have Raging Bull as well. You can just go through these movies, and then think see this in a different light. You know, what's the main important is you would start by talking about the character, the strength, flaws, what do they want to do, what how they are, like their mental state in specific, and also about all of the complex characters and their interactions with the protagonist. Also, that could be included as well. So the interest is only on what happens to characters. So this is what a character-driven story means. Uh, and then we would move on to the next type, which is called the plot-driven. So yeah, sorry about that. So in a plot-driven, the story is it's all about what happens. There's a complex plot. There's like this huge story arc that's like drives the characters to toward. So I don't know if many people have seen this, but there was this really old serial called The Mentalist, I think, or something. It's a detective serial about a guy who solves crimes in a very quirky and very intelligent way possible. And yeah, so it's like kind of like a Sherlock Holmes kind of a thing, but I guess people might berate me for saying that it's like Sherlock Holmes because I think it's like really, really good. So no, nothing like Sherlock Holmes. But yeah, moving forward, uh, so there's like this overarching plot about us about another like villain inside the story, which like it's there and they like encompass a lot of seasons and they don't exactly conclude it immediately. They use the other characters. They use a lot of characters that are deeply involved in the story as like what do you say as explained over here plot devices or like tools to like enhance the story more further, and that's how it develops, and then there's like a huge story that is like overarching plots, and then it just concludes after that. So the takeaway from all of this is that a full-on plot-driven story is gonna be really bad. Okay, it's nothing like okay. So there's been a lot of controversy about some games. I won't name them, but guys might know if you know what I'm talking about. A really popular game that released a couple of this I think last year or something, or this year itself, and the entire game was so inviting. It was really good. It's like a lot of enthusiasm for it. But the problem was it was just a plot-driven story. This like, story was not that great as well. There was no character development and stuff, and that's how the story was not, um, you know, a really good thing, a really good just like destroyed the game instantly. So that's why it's important to have a blend of both real life people as well as an overarching plot. So what would be what you can try like a way to blend both of them is to kind of like use the plot to explain the internal conflict of the character, which is like does changes and transformation, like transforms him to be a different person because of the overarching plot. And that's there's even I've included a chart how to blind plotting character. You guys can take a moment to read this as well if you wish to. But yeah. Hmm. Okay, so I'll give a brief explanation, then we can move forward as well. So your first plot point, that is your conflict that's been like brewing through Act One, it's like it officially begins, and at the same time your character could make some kind of like a decision or something, so that he could overcome those flaws that they've been suffering from Act One inside the Act One. And when you reach the midpoint, they'll believe a lot of stories have like this moment where oh yes, okay, I found the key to winning this. If I use this weapon, I'll kill the Demon King or something. And it's like 100% sure. Even for example, imagine in Legend of Zelda, if you know the game, suppose the entire story was with a Master Sword, but it doesn't work at the end. Yes, so that would be another story, like another way to increase the story, make it more engaging, and that's how you would blend between plot and character. and then you would understand that it's not the sword that has been, helping you, but it's actually the you yourself who has all of the power and the knowledge to defeat the Demon King, and you don't need some weapon or some item to tell you that without them you can't defeat anybody or something like that. It's kind of like a very motivating way of blending both plot and characters while also teaching the character a lot about the entire thing as well. Like, teaching him how to overcome their conflicts and stuff like that. And, just like don't bring back their old flaws and, stuff like that. Um, I think a very popular movie that was included in this particular plot style was Chain Kuli Ki Main Kuli. I think it was about a small kid who was trying to, like, he always believed that his bat was the one which made sixes and fours and, got won them like World Cups and stuff. But it wasn't just like, it was just the bat, the cricket bat was not the only thing. It was also him himself. And that they explain like at the final, in the final arc, when the bat was broken by another teammate in the same team. And then the guy was so sad, but then he takes another normal bat and they still was able to do the same, like hit sixes and stuff. So yeah, that would be your story focus. I hope you guys understood this. But now I'll be moving forward to the next part. Um, the two types of character arcs. So there are basically two types of character. One would be a positive character, one would be negative character. So, like for example, positive character goes through a very rough and like very rough journey, and then ultimately discovers that, oh, this truth, oh, okay, this is the truth, and then he becomes a better person because of that. For example, if you play the game Infamous, it's like the best game to explain this. If you guys have played the Infamous series, you basically get to play as both as a villain or as a hero. It's basically your choice, and what you do in the game ultimately decides on how you would be inside the world as well. So if you're a good guy, you would do the good missions. You would not kill people. Instead, you would use your power and stuff, and that would be your journey. And then the final truth of that entire journey was him understanding that he had to sacrifice the main character Cole. I'm talking about the original series, not the later ones, but the original Infamous 2, which I used to play a lot. The main character discovers that he is also the cause of the plague is all of these people with abilities, and the only way to remove the plague from the entire nation is to remove all of the powers from all of the other people who had abilities. But in doing so, he would also kill himself, and he would also die, and that would be his truth. And then he sacrificed himself and became a better person at the end. So that would be the positive arc or character arc. But if you were a negative character arc, you wouldn't think about what's gonna happen, even though you get to know the same truth. You embrace it as a lie. You don't think of it as a truth. That's what Cole did in his game. If you go for the negative arc, and this entire transformative journey just makes him embrace that truth as a lie, and then he becomes a worse person by letting everyone else die, like letting the plague continue, and yeah, and he himself live in the story. So that would be um, like the two types of character arcs. If you guys haven't played Infamous 2, I suggest somehow find a way to play that game. It's a masterpiece. I really love that game. It's like really good if you guys haven't tried that out. So, yeah, the next important part is to understand what are personalities. So, a lot of people must have taken their personality. I think the 16 personality test. That's exactly what this is. If you guys want, just go out, try and see what kind of personality you are. But yeah, there's like basically 16 different types of personality. You guys can see it all over here. ISTJ, ISFJ means like a bunch of, looks like a bunch of like letters, but then yeah, there's a huge uh, what do you say? Um, difference between both. Basically, uh, in all 16 combinations, this is combination of these eight letters in like four these things. So basically, it's either E or I, or S or N, or T or F, or J or P. So you guys can see what are these different letters, what do they mean, and then you can even see that in this chart they have an explanation for all of that. But this is probably a bit like, if this is a bit harder for you to make characters based on this personality type, then I would suggest going for this, an archetype. So it's very simple to use 12 Jungian archetypes to make a it's a very small trick, and you can make like a solid character personality with all of this. And there are basically 12 types, and you can like make your characters based on these 12 types. So there's the innocent, the orphan, the hero, the caregiver, the explorer, the rebel, the lover, the creator, the jester, the sage, the magician, and the ruler. So you have all. If you even sit and start comparing to different characters, like suppose, let's say, there was a king, like he's always having a lot of power, and he's just really like really arrogant or something. So you could say that this he would come into the ruler. If you want him to be evil, then start make him be a bit more authoritarian. However, if you want him to make be more good, then you can have something like in the goal part, you can see create a community. That basically means that he helps the community, he cares about the community and stuff like that. First, the caregiver is just like someone, being exploited. Like she's always easygoing. People take advantage of her and stuff like that. That would be what a caregiver would be. And this is like some important. Some movies, yeah, this is some archetypes from some movies. Like I can see the hero comes from, this is like two types: fantasy as well as science fiction. You have the main hero, then you have the sidekick, the maidens, the wise old man. You have all of them. The nurturing mother, the villains. You have Voldemort, Sauron, Darth Vader, and then the Alliance. But yeah, you can just go through all of these and stuff like that. It's basically it's there everywhere. You can just see. But yeah, okay, so the next one is a very, very, very detailed structure. This is mainly for hero's journey. So there's this guy, a mythologist named called Joseph Campbell. He wrote this book called A Hero with a Thousand Faces. So in this book, he actually described the format of a hero's journey, and this entire piece of work in the writing community, this this was a brilliant piece of work that it gave writers to get like a guardrail, or like a kind of like a rail to explain the hero's journey. And it's a very, very, very good like guideline. It's very operative, intimate, and it gives everything. Is subtext, is tonal balance, is everything in this particular format. So I suggest you guys use this. I'll be explaining this in detail right now. So you have some of the major movies. All of them have used this example for creating this particular story. And yes, this is your hero's journey. So I shall be explaining it in a bit more detailed way. So your first part would be your departure, that is your ordinary world. So the hero is usually uneasy, uncomfortable. He is, introduced sympathetically so that the audience can identify, with the situation, with the dilemma. He's shown against a background of environment, hereditary, personal history, some kind of polarity in the hero's life is pulling him in different directions, and he's causing stress to him. So that is exactly what your first part of your story would be, and that's what you would do. That's how you would illustrate a bit more and explain, introduce the character with that. And then you have the call to adventure. So the call to adventure is just like the hero starts off in like um, in a very mundane situation, like it's of normality, from which some information is received that acts as a call to head off into the unknown. So something that like initiates something like someone asking for help, or something that's happening in your life, and then you respond to it. That would basically mean a call to adventure. Joseph Campbell said that this call actually signifies that destiny has summoned the hero and transferred his spiritual center of gravity from within the pale society to a zone unknown. This fateful region of both treasure and danger may be variously represented. So it could be a distant land, it could be a forest, an underground between the waves, but it's always a place of is very strange, fluid and polymorphous beings, unimaginable torments, superhuman people, as well as impossible delight. So all of these, it's basically an entire mystery. This place, whatever this place, wherever the hero is being summoned. If you guys remember this serial, The Fate, the Wing Saga, getting called to that country where the magic school is. I don't remember the name of the school. It was, I think, Althea or Athea. I don't remember exactly. But yeah, so getting called into that world, it's basically it's a very strange world. It's always fluid, polymorphous beings. Or best example for this would be Harry Potter. When Harry gets called into the wizarding world, it's very strange. You hear a lot of terms that are like not even there. Like you can't even imagine people actually those things to be actual items or stuff. I mean, they're not actual items, but then yeah, but still, it's that kind of a world. It's kind of like that. It's very strange. It's there's like huge beings like the centaurs. There are weird, like not weird, but like different creatures, different beasts, fantastic beasts, and where to find them. But yeah, so that would be the first call to adventure. Then refusal of the call. Basically, it's the main character is fear. Like he fears this change. Like he doesn't want this change to happen. He's like comfortable in his own comfort zone. But then often when this call is given, this like the future hero just always refuses to heed it. It could be from a sense of duty, or it could be obligation, fear, insecurity, sense of inadequacy, or any range of reasons that can work to hold the person in his or her circumstances. So Campbell says that this converts adventure into its negative. The subject loses affirmative action, becomes a victim to be saved, and his flowering world becomes a wasteland of price stones, and his life feels meaningless. Um, for example, mm, what would be a good example of this? Yes, the best example would be the part where Miles in Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse, he was not able to refuse. He was not going to give the call. Like he doesn't know if he should become Spider-Man or not. He initially even tells Spider-Man that the original Spider-Man that uh, I don't. He doesn't want to have these powers. Like he doesn't want these powers. But then Spider-Man tells him that it's not. It's not a thing. Like it's not. It's gonna change. Your entire life is gonna change, and it's not. It's not his choice to make not to have those powers. But yes, the next stage. So these the next stage is going to be meeting the mentor. So basically, once the hero is committed to the quest, consciously, unconsciously, his or her guide and magical helper appears and becomes known. This training and equipment advice will be provided. More often than not, the supernatural mentor will also present the hero with one or more talismans or artifacts that will help them later on in their quest. The author Campbell also says that there are those who don't refuse the call. The first encounter of the hero is with a protective figure, often like some very old person. Like in case of Harry Potter, it would be Dumbledore, or in case of Spider-Man, it would be the alternate version of Peter Parker in Spider-Verse, or in case of okay, I told Harry Potter. In case of Matrix, it would be Morpheus meeting the mentor. So Campbell says that those who don't refuse the call, they give this protective figure, whoever it is, they give the hero an amulet to fight against the dragon forces, or like something like to help the hero with. Also, this figure is like supposed to be like like benign. He's protecting the power of destiny, and having responded to this call and continuing to follow courageously as consequences unfold, the hero finds all the forces of the unconscious at his side, and the Mother Nature supports his mighty task. So this would be a very excellent example. Just give me a second. Uh, yeah, just give me a second. I'll be back. Yeah, we're experiencing a little bit of difficulty. Just let me, I'll just solve it and we'll continue with the session. So please bear with us till that time. Yeah, sorry about that. We are back, and now I'll be continuing the explanation of the hero's journey. So, yeah, we've explained about meeting the mentor, and now we're going to go to the next step that would be crossing the threshold. So, crossing the threshold is where like person actually enters this field of adventure. Uh, the main character would, or like leave with the known limits of his server worlds, and then ventures into a very unknown and dangerous realm where the rules and limits are known. So this is basically the first entrance, moving towards the um, strange world. You're committing to that change. You're understanding. Yes, this is what I'm going to do. I understand this is scary. This is a lot of change. This Everything is transforming in front of him right now. But taking the step towards committing to this change is crossing this particular threshold. Then you have tests, allies, enemies. Basically, um, you would be entering the belly of the whale, in other words. So it's basically a road of trials. It's like a lot of things that happen. There is any just like the you'll be experimenting with all going to the new world, experiencing new conditions and stuff like that. And then once you reach like to the midpoint of the story, which would be the major change into the like the plot twist or the big uh, twist into the game. uh, Yeah, so that would come into approach of like the inmost cave, and then you would have ordeal, death, and rebirth. So you would attempt that big change. The main character would attempt that particular change. He understands that the reality of the situation, the gravity of what's happening, and then that would be that part. And then moving forward, he once he overcomes this particular climax, whatever crisis is happening, then he would get his reward. Or it could be anything in terms of reward. It could be like the achievement of the quest, or like where the person went on the journey to get, or like change the person, transform him into a better person or into a worse person. It could be anything, this particular reward, and that would be your consequence of doing this entire journey. And then you would in your road back, first thing would be the refusal of return. You have After experiencing this new world, you don't want to go back. So the best example to explain this is when, like in Harry Potter, the like Harry didn't want to go back uh, to his relative's house after he went to Hogwarts, and then that was because he didn't want to return, and he wanted to stay in the strange and new world, because that's where he found what he wanted to do, what is his like purpose in life and stuff like that. So that would be a road back part of it. Then you do have resurrection. Suppose there's like some final something that would lead to the next story, some final attempts, some last minute dangers, something minor or something that would be there. One example would be that the gateway to the old world is closing quickly, and the character has to run or race to the portal or something and escape before the portal closes. So that would be part like resurrection. And then once everything is done, he would return back to um, freedom. So basically, he would get the freedom to live from fear of death, and then it's also like living in the moment, neither anticipating the future or regretting the past. So that would be your final structure. These 12 acts, these 12 stages of the journey, is a very good guideline or a it's a very good guardrail for creating a structure of a hero's journey, because most of the games are dependent on such kind of structures. You take any popular game for example, and you will see that those games always and always there that entire story fits into this particular guardrail. And yeah, that's basically it. You have This is another example. As you can see, there's a bit more in detail, but it's very good to understand this. But yeah, so that would be it for the hero's journey. And now we would be moving towards some tips to help draft a story that works. Yeah. So first thing is, why do you even want to tell this particular story? What's the heart and soul of this particular story that makes it special or even unique? So basically, there's a lot of stories in the world, and most of them they don't have a very strong why. So that just makes the story a very lackluster, just uh, reduces the entire gameplay at the end, and it doesn't make it engaging at all. So the most important part is to figure out why you want to tell this particular story. Um, so this would lead into the thematic exploration, or subtext, what you want to deliver a meaningful message, or some sort, or like a story which doesn't sound as if someone's preaching something to you, but it's that every story, it should not exist just because it is cool. We need to find first the substance, fill it with style. That is all of your what are the latest trends and stuff like that. You can fill it with those. But then, yeah, what is the substance of the story? That's what is important. Then you would go for anchoring everything with a reason. So no matter what happens in the story, it should have a particular reason for happening. So in all these crime thriller stories, every single evidence, every single clue is very, very important, because they all contribute in some way or the other to the final goal or final mystery of what is happening in the entire story. So it's very easy to reality, but fiction is never realistic. No matter how realistic the setting of the story is, it's actually hard to make a like the process of make believe is very hard. And then, so that's why no matter how small or how inconsequential it may seem, it's important that whatever happens in the story, it has to be anchored behind a particular reason. And then this would also reduces the plot being like there are loose ends, or there's like threads just unnatural, or there's some plot holes as well. So, yeah, that would be one of it. The other one would be coincidences. So, some coincidences are fine in the story. You can have like like characters meeting each other by a coincidence, but using coincidences to get them out of trouble and stuff is just cheat. It's just not a very good way of telling stories. No, like suppose the character fights the demon boss, and then suddenly from the sky a sword falls, and then that sword is like particular like the most overpowered sword in the entire in the entire world. and the character just uses it and defeats the king in like one shot. So that would just be like lazy writing or incompetent writing. But yeah, so avoiding coincidences is important. Then you would move on to the internal conflict. So there are basically two, the internal conflict can be broken down into both desire and fear, and how it affects a character is very important. That is, so a character may have a very deep rooted desire, but even that fear prevents them from pursuing what they want directly or indirectly. So there's a conflict between both desire and fear, and this makes a character, to be in a state of misbelief is the perfect word in this case. He would be inside his comfort zone, and he wouldn't know how the world is. He won't be able to have a good judgment of the world because he's just always in his bubble, in his comfort zone. And how the character grows out of this bubble, how he comes out of this comfort zone, undergoes a transformation, this is where you should be targeting for your particular story. So uh, being able to establish this conflict will ensure that everyone would have will be engaged. Like this would be the hook that draws the audience into your stories, and it should also inform and even make sense. So whatever the character does, it should have it this conflict should contribute to some extent to this action. And then there's a clear line of personal meaning, reason what they to do what they do. It makes it easier for audience to root for, relate, and get behind the character's actions, and gives meaning to the story. And so this would be one more tip that I would say. And then the final one is to make sure that the story is not about what happens. It's that how the what happens affects and transforms the character. So basically, your plot should and always affect the characters, transform them, and influence their decisions and choices. So the objective of the goal should not mean something that it's very dear to the character or something like that. Because if such things exist, then probably the audience cannot engage and care for the characters also. They would just and then that would just make the story plot driven only, and make it entirely bland. So making finding a balance between both is what's important in this. And then making the threat tangible. So what happens if the protagonist loses in the journey? Usually it would be death. Protagonist dies, but then you need to keep the stakes. Like suppose there are some characters. If you go for a character type where the main character is not afraid of dying, not afraid of sacrificing himself, even if he fights against the antagonist. So basically you need to make sure that the entire story is, or whatever the plot is a bit against the protagonist, it's not for the protagonist, and then the protagonist, using his strengths and weaknesses, he makes the overcomes this particular challenge and obstacles. So and always, no matter what story you have, a game protagonist is only as good as the antagonist challenge they face. So you would never ever think about Harry Potter if there was never there was never Voldemort. You would never think of Optimus Prime if there was never Megatron. If you never think about Sherlock Holmes if there was never a Moriarty. Everyone has an antagonist, an arch nemesis, someone that is completely the face of the anti whatever. Basically, the antagonist has to be equally as good as the protagonist, or even better, or much better than him. So basically, the three types of antagonists. One would be the mirror villain. So as I said, you have the Joker, Moriarty, Megatron, Silva, Akuma, Chitti, Robo, Magneto, all of these are like they're just polar opposite of the protagonist. They share some characteristic traits. So basically, they're two sides of the same coin. And then these kind of villains are used to complement and highlight each other's traits as they challenge a hero's sense of purpose and methods. So I think the best example for this would be like in My Hero Academia, which is another popular anime. You have All for One and One for All. Both of them are so they're basically brothers. The powers are very similar to each other, but there's a stark difference, and how the protagonist and antagonist use the power is also very different. So that would be a best example of a minor villain. A looming threat is someone like a villain who's like a threat is like constant, but they're not there. They're not shown much. Best example would be Thanos in the Avengers movie series. Initially, he was just there. Like he was foretold in all of the Avengers movies. Every single end credit scene told something about the upcoming war with Thanos, and they had very limited presence and limited screen time. But then once they do come face to face in this person, it's like that would be the looming threat, and that would be the actual this thing. And villain protagonist, the final type, is one who is like he is very, very bad. Like no matter what he is just villainous. He just doesn't want to like embrace the truth, falls deeper into the abyss because of how they do. Could be most of these villains are like basically insane villains. Like you would go into like psychology at this point, where you would be explaining or not explaining, but you would be working with these kind of feelings and stuff like that. So yeah, you have Thanos who wanted mass genocide. You have Megamind who just wanted to wreak havoc. You have Ultron who just wanted to like remove everyone and make everyone machines in the world. But yeah, and the final tip is to use subplot. So subplots are like wonderful ways to develop supporting characters or plot points for like a brief while. So while the focus shifts on the main storyline to build something else. So this subplot could be anything, could be romantic in nature, it could be uh, some it's just like a meaningless distraction. Or it could be like friendship bonding or something, like really good bonding. Like for example, again we're taking back example of My Hero Academia. These There are a lot of subplots, and one of the major one is that all of the characters, like all of the people in, they're all part of the same class. So how they act like as normal students, and at the same time how they sacrifice their lives to be heroes is also a wonderful subplot. So their daily life at school is just like a distraction. It could be even comedy humor as well. That was an amazing subplot that you could use to break tension and as well as engagement in the story. So this is it for today's session actually. Um, we will actually cover, since we have a little bit of extra time as well, let's cover a bit of the next session's parts as well. And then we shall take a break and then continue from the next in the next session. But yeah, so the next session we're going to be discussing about game scripts. So basically, what is the purpose of game scripts? So there's like a lot of steps that helps in generating a story idea, and then converting that into the storyline is what's important. So we are going to be working on that. Then we have a basic example of a script. So these are important for filming cinematics or having dialogues in the game and stuff like that, or like just giving a proper flow to the game narrative. So you start the starting, ending of cutscenes or the gameplay sections in the game, and then what is the gameplay also you need to add all of that and then stuff. So this is an example of Spider-Man script, which I'm going to be showcasing right now. So yeah. You can read this. So basically, there's a police dispatcher. It starts. He says that he's got a move, is like Spider-Man's dialogue, and then he runs to the open window. And then we cut to outside. There's like thwip thwip. There's like a pair of web shoes shoot out from the window, and a moment later, Spider-Man. And basically now it's written. It's written that, oh, okay, you see him in all his glory. So basically, the entire time you could just see part like him moving around. You never saw his face till, or like him wearing the suit or something. And then you would have like the cinematic. This will be the cinematic, and then when once you start the gameplay, you would have this part of the script written down, and then you would have the dialogues inside the game while you are swinging and like playing the game. So that would be your particular, what do you say, like example of a script. Very wonderful script which you guys can read. There's more in, if you just search for it online, you will find it. But yeah, so that is this is a very basic thing. We have a lot of things that we're going to be discussing. So right now we have explained about uh, anatomies of stories, and then how to blend points, personality types, the different Junkian archetypes, as well as the 16 personality types, then a structure of a hero's journey. It's a very long thing, but I suggest if you guys go through it once more by yourself. It's a very wonderful concept. And then you have the game scripts as well. We're not going to be working more on game scripts, but yes, we can explain this in the next class. And then we'll also do narrative design, which is an important and very important topic that we're going to be having. We'll be looking at more examples as well. I'll be preparing a bit more examples in the next sessions and explain a bit more about all of these things. Um, Tonal design and also quest design. I'll be explaining those as well. So you guys can look forward to the next session. It's going to be really interesting. But yeah, as you can see, first we have like level design, then we have level layouts, technical design, gameplay design, and all of these we're going to be looking at next in the next classes. So let's end today's session with this short intro to the next session. Thank you guys for joining today. The session was is a bit short. I think it's only been an hour and 15 minutes, but we'll continue with this in the next session. I'll be explaining a bit more in detail, and it's going to be really good. And hopefully, if you guys have any doubts or stuff like that, just let me know, and I can like work on it and stuff, and send if you need notes or something like that, let me know. I've prepared all of this for you guys so that you guys can, take time to understand and, read through it as well. It's prepared a lot of examples as well. So please go through this session if you have any doubts. You can message me. I'll be leaving my number, or just like message Instagram on our Instagram as well, and we'll reply to you immediately. So feel free to contact me for anything you want to do and stuff like that. With that, I'll be ending today's session. Thank you for joining today. I hope you guys will attend the next session and found this one enjoyable and actually intuitive as well. And hopefully, it helped you guys to understand how you guys can create your own scripts and writing. So, yep. Thank you guys for joining today. Yeah, you will also be getting your link. Wait a second, let me just see if it's ready. Copy link. Yes, so I'm sending the link in the chat. So please take the time to um, fill in the link as well as you get for your attendance. And yep, that's it.